Hello and welcome to this week's instalment of the Gersnet Podcast. Another big week is in the bag, and we've seen Rangers progress through to the next round of the Scottish Cup, as well as keeping one foot in the title race. As always, we're here at the Gersnet Podcast to pick the bones of 180 minutes of football, as well as taking a wee look at the ongoing circus that is Scottish football. Obviously, it's going to take us a wee while to dissect all the penalty decisions we've had to see this week, so we'll jump right into that in a second. Let me introduce our guests for the show today. First up, we've got the Gersnet regular, Pete. Pete, how are you doing this evening?
Yeah, doing great. Thanks very much. Difficult week with all these penalty claims and things like that. No doubt we'll get into them. So I decided today to penalise myself and go in and pull wallpaper off the wall. So I've been doing that all day.
That sounds like a cracking Monday for you, Pete. Living it up on the continent, eh?
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Everybody thinks we have plenty of fun out dancing and doing everything on the continent, but...
Yeah, just like the rest of us tearing wallpaper off the walls.
Yeah, that's it.
Also with us this evening, it's a warm welcome back to Christine Somerville. Christine, welcome along. How's things with you?
Yeah, I'm really good, Ross. Thanks very much for asking. On 2 weeks in a row for a wee change. I think somebody pulled out, so I'm on 2 weeks in a row. So to the guy on Twitter that really hated me, I apologise for that.
No, we're delighted to have you back. Don't worry about the guys on Twitter. Most of them are undercover Celtic fans anyway, so I wouldn't worry about that. Right, guys, plenty to talk about this evening. The biggest talking point, of course, is going to be Saturday's win over St Mirren. Now, Pete, before we get into the multitude of penalty decisions, tell me what you thought of the game.
Well, I thought it was a game. The Rangers were in total control. I thought that St Mirren in the first half had a really good period. Rangers started good, and then St Mirren came into it. And, well, they really had to come out after Rangers scored the penalty. St Mirren came really into the game, I thought, and actually gave quite a good show. And it wasn't until we really got the second goal that sort of killed St Mirren. They sort of dropped their heads at that bit. But I thought it was quite a good game, and I think you're going to hit in the manager's comments after it, which we'll discuss later, I believe.
I will definitely come on to the manager's comments, because I certainly found Steven Gerrard's post-match interview quite interesting. So we'll come on to that in a sec. Christine, how about yourself? I take it you were at the game. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I was at the game. I thought I kind of agree with Pete to a certain extent that St Mirren did come into it for a wee while without actually really causing us any great danger, really. You know, I don't think we ever looked as if we were going to concede a goal. But I think sometimes when you score as early as we did, it then sets up an expectation that you're going to just keep scoring, and obviously that didn't happen. And as it was getting to near half time, obviously we missed the second penalty. But you're saying, we've had this pressure, but it's only 1-0. But the second half was, I think we were all over them the second half. They weren't really in it at all.
Did St Mirren have a shot and goal, Christine?
I don't think so.
I don't think they did either.
That's the thing, like you said, Dave, Pete, there was obviously a period in the first half where St Mirren were very comfortable holding the ball, and actually I thought that for a while we gave them quite a lot of space, particularly coming into our half. They had a lot of space. They moved the ball all right. They held on to possession okay, but I don't remember McGregor touching the ball other than taking a goal kick, to be honest. So it's not as if we were ever in any danger. And actually, other than about 10-15 minutes in the first half, I thought that St Mirren were one of the poorest sides I've seen us play this season. And I mentioned earlier, Christine, that I found Steven Gerrard's comments slightly odd in the post-match interview, and I'll come on to my thoughts in a minute, but I'd like to hear what you thought of his comments that we had a poor first half and better in the second half. Do you agree with that?
To an extent, I do. But he did qualify it, Rose, by saying that maybe he was just looking for too much sometimes from the players. And I think that maybe there's a frustration there, because we know how well we can play at times, and if we don't live up to that, he's seeing it as not a good performance. But I think we did okay.
Is it possible then that that's maybe something to do with the fact that obviously he had such a high quality as a player that he gets a wee bit frustrated that, maybe Ross McCrory doesn't pass the ball as well as Steven Gerrard did, or, this kind of thing, that the standard that he's seeing in front of him must frustrate him in a way, because it's with all respect to our players, it's a drop in standard from the level that Steven Gerrard was playing at for most of his career.
I think undoubtedly, yeah, Ross, that he's obviously got very high standards, and but as I said, we still lack that consistency. That we give the ball away an awful lot. I don't know whether MD else agrees with me, but I think sometimes it's so frustrating. We just hit the ball and it goes to the opposition, and you're thinking, why did you do that?
I think the point I was trying to make was that Gerrard, for me, was quite strong and assertive in his criticism of Rangers at half-time, in that I think he said at half-time he walks in and everyone's eyes are on the floor because they know it's not good enough and they know it's not the standards that we expect. It's easy to forget that we were winning and we were comfortable. I don't think they had a shot on target, like I've said. Do you think that he was maybe over the top with his criticism there? How did you view our first half performance in particular?
Well, I think you've got to remember that there's another team in the field. We can't be 90 minutes in control of the ball. And I think even when St Mirren were in the ball, the transition from Rangers from defending to attack was lightning quick. And really, we should have scored at that time, because some of the breaks were absolutely brilliant. And it was just one-touch football right away. And we had a lot of good chances, just unfortunate. The St Mirren keeper pulled off a few good saves.
I think that's got a lot to do with Ryan Kent coming back to the side, hasn't it? The pace that he brings in transitioning from defence to attack and taking players on and linking up with the forwards is excellent and makes a real difference.
Well, the link up with Barisic, it's sort of the same in the other side with Tavernier and Candeias. So now we're sort of seem more balanced. And I think Barisic and Kent, that could turn into a great couple.
I certainly agree with you. I think now we see a bit more balance in that, like you say, the relationship that developed last season into this season between Candeias and Tavernier was excellent. And I was saying this to the guys that I was at the game with on Saturday, that you notice when Candeias is out of the side, not just because I think Candeias creates a lot going forward. I think he's a real asset to the side, but the defensive understanding that he has with Tavernier, that they'll cover each other, that Candeias will track back and always fight to win the ball back in his own half. If we can replicate that on the left-hand side, then that's a real bonus, that's a real plus, and it makes us a lot stronger. Obviously, the only difficulty there that we'll have is that both Kent and Barisic have been injured for large portions of the season, so there's kind of question marks hanging over their fitness there. Christine, if we go back to Steven Gerrard, the manager, last time I think you and I were on a podcast together, you were talking about how you were waiting for an invite to go and have a bottle of wine with Steven Gerrard. I know you're a big fan of the man.
I am.
In my opinion, though, sometimes his criticism of the players goes over the top. He's laid into this side more than once, and really let the players know through the media that he's not happy with them. It's easy to forget that we won that game 4-0 by some of the comments that have come out after the game. Is it fair to say that sometimes he goes a wee bit over the top in his critiques?
Possibly. I'll concede that. Yeah, he probably does. We've had I don't mean we've had managers before, but there have been managers before. And to be honest, if it wasn't Steven Gerrard and it wasn't Rangers, I would probably say he's been a bit unfair in his team. But because it's Stevie G, he gets away with it. For me, but he probably, I think he wears his heart in his sleeve. I think he just says exactly what he's thinking.
I mean, is there anything that Steven Gerrard could do that he wouldn't get away with for you?
That's That's a kind of funny question.
That's a thinker, that one, isn't it? I'll have to come back to that one next week, maybe.
Well, I suppose if there's any horrible defeats to them again, like we had last season, I would be starting to question him.
Aye, maybe if he stood on the sideline, stood on his head and chewing his zip, something like that.
Like that, yep.
Aye.
Yep.
Ross, you said that St Mirren was the easiest game we've had this season. I think Celtic was the easiest game we've had this season.
Actually, aye, that's a fair point. I never thought of that. I think that St Mirren were poor. I don't think they had a lot of quality. They brought in Stubbs at the start of the season, and he was a disaster. And that he just brought in some of players that were nowhere near the calibre required to keep a club in the Scottish Premier League. Some of the players that they brought in the summer, like bringing from the Conference North and Conference South down in England, trying to expect them to make the step up and play against big clubs week in, week out. So when they bring in this new manager, I think they've had a lot of players going out the door, a lot of new players coming in. It doesn't seem to have made much of a difference, although it's early days, they're all bedding in a wee bit. I thought they were poor. I really did. Right, I think we're all kind of skirting around the main topic of Saturday's game. The fact that there were 4 penalties given to Rangers, and let's be fair, there could have been 5 if you count the one of Morelos towards the end. I've been thinking, I don't know if there's ever been 4 penalties towards Rangers. Certainly no in my lifetime that I can think of. Last time I can think of anything like that was when we got 3 penalties away at Dens Park. Must have been about 10 years ago. Barry Ferguson took some of them. Pete, what did you make of the 4 penalties? How many penalties really should we have had? We've all had time to see replays. We've all read every article that's been written under the sun about these. How many penalties do you think we really should have had?
The first one was a Stonewaller. That was a definite penalty. The second one, I don't even think Defoe thought it was a penalty. I think he just fell and tried to get up as quick as possible. And obviously didn't want to say to the referee, or somebody even said that he did say to the referee it wasn't a penalty, but I don't know whether that's true or not. But I was actually, when I first saw them, I thought, well, the handball and the Cowdenbeath one, I thought they're outside the box. But when you see it slowed down, they're definitely inside the box. So I think it was great decisions from the referee. You can see that, I mean, the rule is that even if it starts outside the box and you take it into the box, then it's still a penalty. And you can just see the handball incident, it's right into the box. It's still in his hands. So it's a penalty.
Exactly. That's the key point. You've hit the nail on the head there. The key point is no matter where the foul starts, if it continues into the box, it's a penalty. And the reason I know that is because I think last season on one of these podcasts, a penalty was given against us. And I said, well, that foul started outside the box, so surely you give the foul where it started. And someone actually on the Gersnet forum pulled me up on it and said that, that's not the rule. So now that, we all know that the rule is if it starts outside the box and it carries on into the box, it's a penalty. It's written in black and white. Christine, do you agree with Pete's assertions that 3 of them were penalties?
I do. I thought that, I thought at the time the first one was, like Pete said, Stonewaller. Wasn't convinced with the second one, and when we missed it, I thought, well, maybe justice was done there because probably, I think it was a bit soft. The handball, I think, and nobody seems to have brought this up, but as well as putting his hands over his face, in the box, when it came down, he also handballed it. If you look at it again, so when his hand was at his side, he kind of moved the ball with his hand inside the penalty box.
Well, he practically caught the ball. It was resting in his arms, Yep.
And the fourth one, I need to look at it again. I thought it was debatable, but I wasn't sure. But then the Morelos one, to me, that was a Stonewaller.
Aye. Look, I'm similar line of thought as you. I think the first was clear as day. The second, it's almost as if Defoe expected a bit more contact, so was ready to go down. And when that contact never came, he always tried to kind of pull out, and it just ended up in this wee little stumble. And actually, when I saw it, from my position first time I saw it, I did think penalty, but then I've seen it back and gone, actually, no, it wasn't a penalty. So I can actually see why the ref's given it.
Yeah.
At the speed the ball was going and everything, you can see why the ref's given it. The handball is, to me that's clear as well. The guy's caught the ball and he's carried it into the box. And it was close, was it in, was it out? But the photos are clear as day. He's in the box, even if he's on the line, he's in the box, and it's a penalty.
Well, Sky Sports they brought in that referee Gallagher from England, and he said as well, they slowed it right down and did a far better angle of it, and you can just see that even with Cowdenbeath, the guy's still holding his leg when he's in the box. So that's following the rule that it starts outside the box, he's still in the box. When he goes into the box, it's a foul. Then it's a definite penalty. And Gallagher said that as well. With all the 3 penalties we're talking about, he said the Defoe one as well didn't think it was a penalty, but although he couldn't really see how much contact there was.
That's the thing. It's still slightly ambiguous how much contact there was.
Yeah. Aye. But the funny thing as well is that I don't know who it was that the referee that supports Celtic, Conroy, is it you call him?
Oh, aye.
He picked all 3 not to be penalties.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Listen, and like we say, the potential 5th penalty on Morelos, you've seen them given it, hundreds of times. But I think the pressure on the referee, he's already given 4 penalties. He's never given a 5th. But look, when we come up against industrial, almost agricultural sides like St Mirren every other week. And when your entire game plan is to break up play and to kick lumps out of the other players, you just got to make sure you're being careful if you do that near the box, because if you start kicking lumps out the players in the box, you're going to give away penalties. It's no rocket science. If you commit a foul in the box, it's a penalty. So I think we can clearly establish that fouls have been committed. There was questions as to whether they were inside or outside of the box. We've seen the video evidence that they were inside the box. You'd think that would be enough to put this all to bed, but in the media circus that is Scottish football, where some people are absolutely stealing a wage in the media, we've had an unbelievable fallout, as we all knew there would be. Pete, have you been keeping an eye on what the Scottish media have been saying on these penalties?
Yeah, well, it's been a sort of a mixed bag of how many penalties Rangers got that weren't justified, wasn't it? Really only Sky Sports I saw that they said that the most penalties were good penalties. But as I say, Conroy, he was wheeled in, and then he ended up with a big thing about in his day that all the referees were Rangers supporters except him. So it's absolutely stupid. It's the way they're going on about it. But it's just anything they can do to get a kick at Rangers, isn't it?
It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. I mean, obviously it all then takes this form of conspiracy, this, conspiracy, that. If you look at the stats, of course, who's had the more penalties over the last 2 seasons? Celtic have had them. Who's had the more red cards over the last 2 seasons? Rangers have had them. So if you look at the stats, there's no shred of evidence that there's any refereeing conspiracy towards Rangers. Of course there isn't. But it doesn't stop people. Christine, how about yourself? Have you been keeping an eye on the media and what they're all saying about this?
Yeah, I tend not to, I try not to read them, to be honest, because it just gets me annoyed, and you think, some of these idiots, you're actually giving them, credence by even reading what they're saying. But nobody mentioned the 2 penalties we should have got at Cowdenbeath that we didn't.
Exactly.
It's just one of these things. I mean, it was strange being there and seeing, penalty after penalty, because you just don't normally get that. But, what if it is? What if, a club gives away that many penalties? Do you expect the referee not to give them because I've already given 2 or I've already given 3? If the referee thinks it's a penalty, he should give it.
That's the key point. And I've seen I've seen folk online on Twitter and on forums and all sorts saying, you should never have 4 penalties in a game. Well, why not? Why should you never have 4 penalties in a game? If there are 4 fouls committed in the box, there's 4 penalties. I mean, it's the disappointing thing with the media. It's not disappointing; it's wholly expected. But the sad thing about the media is the fact that even when, like I say, there was, as soon as the penalties were given, there was perhaps some genuine debate to be had. Were these penalties because were they inside or outside the box? Specifically with the last 2, were they inside? Were they outside the box? But as soon as you show them the photo and the proof that both fouls continued into the box, and you explain the rule that if it's a foul that continues into the box, then it's a penalty, you'd expect the media to kind of run with that, but they don't. They happily ignore that part to focus on the controversy of 4 penalties, despite the fact that it's been proved that he's carried on inside the box. That's the bit that really annoys me. And Christine, I'm glad you kind of brought up the Cowdenbeath game, because we'll move on to that in a second to talk about the game in more detail. But it's striking the fact that the media are going to town on these penalties, but they only ever go to town on refereeing decisions when it benefits Rangers. When there are shocking refereeing decisions that don't benefit Rangers, we don't have 5 days of media fallout and trial by newspaper. We haven't seen, columns and columns and columns of media articles written about Craig Thompson's performance at Cowdenbeath when he could have given us another 3 penalties there, quite justifiably. So Ross, why is it?
Ross, can I come in on that as well?
Sure.
See, when you even go back to the Celtic game, not one person, I talked to a lot of Celtic supporters that day, and not one of them mentioned Morelos. It wasn't until at night BBC pulled it right down to micro slow videos of showing what Morelos did that it became about a talking point.
Aye.
During the game, there was absolutely, and after it, the guys in the pubs and things like that, nobody was talking about it.
No.
It was the day after it all started.
Aye.
Not too much about the handball either, that game. Who was it, McGregor?
Aye, good point. I completely forgot about that. Aye, nothing mentioned about that in the media.
Mm-hmm. It's just a different way, it's different rules for Rangers. It's as simple as that. And I don't know what we do about it, because I don't see it ever stopping. And maybe if it does stop, we're doing something wrong.
Aye, fair point.
But they're jealous.
They'll always be jealous. They'll always be in the shadow. Right, guys, I think we will leave St Mirren there, and we're going to take a wee look back now at the Cowdenbeath game midweek. Obviously, these are, of course, always difficult games going to a lower league opposition in the Cup. It's their Cup final. It's the biggest game of their season. We all probably would have hoped for a 7 or 8-0 pumping, but in truth, that was probably never likely to happen. Christine, what did you make of the overall performance back on Wednesday?
It wasn't a great watch, really, Ross, was it? It was quite, there wasn't a lot of good football played in it. We won, and that's it. And to me, it was interesting, though. I noticed that Rab Boyle was on Twitter, I think it was, saying how he had gone onto the pitch at the end of the game, and it was absolutely solid. So I think the pitch maybe needs, although it had all this treatment beforehand, I would imagine it was a really, really cold night, and I would imagine that as the time was going on, the pitch was just becoming harder and harder and maybe more difficult to play. So probably bringing us down to more to the level of Cowdenbeath rather than anything else. But I think with the Cup, it's just get through to the next round, and then we'll see how it goes from there. And we did that, so I wouldn't want to be too critical.
I think you're probably quite right there talking about the pitch. The pitch will have made a difference in that it's a leveler, and it's the same for both teams. Of course it is, but only one of those teams has the benefit of training 3 times a week on a pitch that has stock car tracks through the middle of it. So it's a leveler, but if you're more used to it, then it's going to be slightly easier.
The stupid thing, though, was that they called the game off and the park was probably a lot better than it was last week.
Aye, and if you believe the media on that, that was Jimmy Bell's fault.
Yeah.
Mental. Listen, Pete, what did you make of the game? Because obviously there's some less easy to please fans have been saying that we were poor, we should have done a lot better. Do you believe we maybe should have done better than we did? Is it fair to say we were poor?
Well, I think you've got to take the pitch into consideration. You obviously seen that Rangers played a lot more of the long ball. Normally, we could try and keep possession in our own half and break into the opposition's half. But now it's just really from the backs, long ball up front, and then try and close down in Cowdenbeath in their own half. But I thought it was a game of two halves. I thought we played well the first half. Obviously got 3 goals. And then the second half, a lot of people were saying that Cowdenbeath were better in the second half, but they weren't better. The Rangers still were better, but Cowdenbeath obviously came into it, and Rangers weren't as dominant in the second half. But it's certainly a game of 2 halves. But as I say, going into the second half, the part was just getting harder and harder and harder. So it's became virtually impossible to play football, I think.
You know, I think that it slightly showed up our weaker players for showing that lack of quality. And I don't want to name him by name, but it's just John Flanagan, I thought, was really toiling out there and struggled to control the ball, struggled to pass the ball, cut out of position. He looked like he didn't want to be there. And I thought when Steven Gerrard came out after the game saying that certain fringe players were given a chance to impress tonight and they did not take that chance, I thought that was aimed squarely at Mr. Flanagan. So I think we'll perhaps not be seeing too much of him for the rest of the season, which is, I don't know, maybe a shame, but he was brought in to be a backup. You'll be a backup. His performance disappointed me.
Well, it's about third choice now, isn't he? And right back and left back now that American guy's come in.
Exactly. Matt Polster, and I'm sure that he'll take a wee while to get up to speed, to get up to fitness with the rest of him. He's probably a signing with one eye on next season rather than this season. But you're right, he's third choice. But I don't know about you, Pete, but I don't think he's showed anything that would make him anything other than third choice in both positions. Yeah,
well, I was just going to say that. I was going to come in and say it wouldn't take him long to catch up with Flanagan. But no, I've never liked him, to be honest. I've never thought he was Rangers class. And when you see the likes of Andy Halliday is probably going to be now the number 2 at left back.
Aye.
Because Barisic, and even then, a lot of people are saying Halliday's better than Barisic, but for me, it's not. For you can just see the class dripping off Barisic. Once he gets up to full speed, he just looks brilliant.
I completely agree. I think that Halliday's done great this season, absolutely great. And who'd have thought that 12 or 18 months ago when he was being bombed out to Azerbaijan that he'd come back and play such an important role? And I absolutely love seeing him in the squad now, whereas last season I'd have paid his bus fare to get him as far away from Ibrox as possible. But I agree with you, Pete, in that Barisic is the number 1 choice left back. He's the most natural, most accomplished left back. It's a shame that he's struggled with injuries. Christine, what did you make of the comments from Gerrard sort of over the winter break when Barisic was going down under a heavy challenge against Helsinki? It almost seemed like he was getting frustrated at Barisic for, I don't know, maybe not having the resilience for the Scottish game. Do you think that's a fair comment?
I think it probably is a fair comment. And I'll have to say I had a really, really bad flu in January, so I gave the Helsinki game a miss, although it was on Rangers TV, so I still managed to see it. But I wasn't sure exactly what he meant by his comments. But then when I looked at it again, it was the amount of times that he had hit the ground, wasn't it?
Aye, sort of thumping the turf.
Yeah. So I think that was maybe a wee bit unfair because I think at the time he made the comments, he wasn't really clear on the extent of the injury. It could have been a bad one, but I don't see players hitting the turf like that unless they're really in pain. Why would they do it?
There's a story in the Daily Record today, or should I say the Daily Rebel, with Barisic, and he said that the boss had a word with him and that he's got to man up to Scottish football.
Oh, right.
So,
okay. Fair enough.
So, and I believe he's doing extra weight training and things like that to get his body up to scratch as well.
Right.
It almost hinted at, things going on that we couldn't quite see. So things going on maybe at the training ground. Maybe he's, gaffer, I can't do this session because I'm feeling a tight hamstring or I've got a sore hip or whatever. I can't take part in this. And if everyone knows that Scottish football is industrial, everyone knows that it's physical and you'll take knocks. And certain players, I mean, how many players have we seen who are creative, who are flair players, have come to Scotland and been kicked from pillar to post and run away with their tails in their legs, both for us and for Celtic. Barisic has taken a lot of investment from Rangers, both in terms of, I don't know what his salary is, but I'm sure it's, very handsome, and paid a lot of money to take him from Osijek. Obviously, he was their club captain, very highly rated over in Croatia. So Rangers have invested in this lad, and I think Gerrard's probably seeing a wee bit more than we're able to see, obviously, at the training centre, which has possibly just caused a wee bit of frustration. And look, Gerrard's the manager. Gerrard knows how to manage his players. If there's anyone that I would trust to motivate a group of players, it's Steven Gerrard. We've all seen what he can do.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And also, I think in terms of Barisic, I mean, he's been unfortunate because he was out for so long with that bad injury. But he's not been used to that type of game in Croatia. It's completely different. It's more the kind of technical thing that we were talking about earlier on. So he just needs to get used to this. This is Scottish football. This is the way it goes. And I'm sure he will be. I'm sure he'll get to the stage where he'll get used to it a wee bit more and hopefully become an even better player for us.
Aye, absolutely. Obviously, we did manage to get through that game against Cowdenbeath, nice and comfortable, no injuries, through to the next round, fantastic. It's quite a tough proposition now going away to Rugby Park and facing Kilmarnock, who obviously took 3 points off us a couple of weeks back down in Ayrshire. Christine, how do you assess our chances against Killie, and what changes do you think we're going to need to make to squeeze by?
I think we're probably going to have to go back to the 4-3-3. I don't think we can afford really to play Defoe and Morelos up, both up front again. I'm just hoping that we don't make the horrendous mistakes that we made in the league game against them. And I think we're very, very capable of beating them if we play to our best and they play to their best. I think we will win, but we just can't have any slack play.
Well, look, we know we can do it. We've put them out the League Cup earlier on in the season at Rugby Park on the Astro. So we know we can do it, and I really hope that this squad can show some maturity and show some football intelligence and prove that lessons have been learned from that last game at Rugby Park. But listen, that leads us really nicely on to our third and final topic for this evening. I kind of wanted to just touch on the squad, how the squad's shaping up. And we've alluded to it so far, the squad rotation that we've had over the last few weeks and the tactical situation since we come back from the winter break. It's almost like since the winter break, since the January recruitment, there's been a lot of questions over team selection and tactics. What is our best 11 and how do we find that right balance of players? Christine, you alluded there to the 4-3-3 versus the 4-4-2. We've seen Diamond tried a couple of times and was unsuccessful at Rugby Park a couple of weeks ago. Probably not so successful in the first half against St Mirren at the weekend there. In my view, if I'm being perfectly honest, I think the squad as a whole is slightly bloated in certain areas. Some fringe players may be now in a more difficult position. If you're thinking about Lafferty, Flanagan, as we've mentioned, Koulibaly, Foderingham, I think I'm trying to say that we almost have two different tiers of players. We've got some players who are guaranteed starters every week because they're of a certain quality, and some fringe players who don't quite have the same level, aren't quite as good as some of the other players. Pete, what kind of shape do you think the squad is in now with a few months left of this title challenge?
Yeah, well, we're certainly playing far better, I think, than we were. We're far more balanced now than we were. Stephen Davis, I'm not overly happy that he's him back, to be honest with you. I wasn't a great fan of him the first time round. Maybe that's strange, but I think he's a player that disappears when the going gets tough. And I far prefer Jack and McCrory. I like when McCrory plays with Jack in the more advanced position. I think a lot of people said that Jack didn't have a lot to offer going forward. But I think when you've seen on Saturday, it was, when he came on, that Jack, he really can play good, because he just changed the game on Sunday. He controlled the midfield, and that was something that Davis couldn't. I must admit, Davis isn't up to scratch yet, but for me, the two midfielders are McCrory and Jack. For the rest, I think the defence, Worrell, that was he made that big mistake against Kilmarnock, didn't he?
He did.
But yeah, he still had some good games. He played well on Saturday, and he played well against the Celtic. So, but I think when Goldson's come in, and for me, Cattage always was the best between Worrell and Cattage. So I would be playing Cattage. Now, Barisic we've already had. Kent's coming on to a great game. And I think Defoe, the way Defoe played on Saturday as well, showed that he can play a lot. Formation, I think, against Aberdeen and Wednesday, and probably Kilmarnock, I think we'll move back to the old system with McCrory and Jack, and probably the team that started with Celtic, is the way to say it.
Aye, I mean, that was the question I was going to ask is, do we carry on with this experiment of the diamond against Kilmarnock, or do we sort of slot back to the 4-3-3 that's kind of tried and tested? Christine, where do you come down on this?
Well, I think the diamond didn't work the last time at Kilmarnock, and I would just go for the, similar to the Celtic lineup, obviously, with Barisic in ahead of Andy Halliday. The one thing I have noticed now is that when you look in our bench, I mean, quite often before you were looking at the bench and thinking, there isn't really a player on the air that can come on and perhaps change the game. Whereas I think we've got that now. We've got much more of a balance. And I think we are a bit top heavy in midfielders, to be honest. But, I still think we can put out a team in the park plus people in the bench that can make a difference to us. And that's really all you want for your team, isn't it?
Aye, absolutely. Christine, what's your opinion on Kyle Lafferty? And what kind of role do you think he will be playing for the rest of the season?
Well, I've never been a great fan of Kyle, I'm afraid. I mean, he used to come good towards the end of the season, if I can remember correctly. And I was down at Kilmarnock that day when he scored to win the league. So, but he's just never been a favourite of mine. I know that when he was with Hearts, he scored some great goals against Celtic, but I just haven't seen it since he's come back. And I know, to be fair, he's not played an awful lot, but he's not a favourite of mine. I have to hold my hands up and say that.
I mean, if he's not playing, there's probably a reason why he's not playing, and that he's not doing it in training. And he's now got two absolutely top class strikers ahead of him in Alfredo Morelos and Jermaine Defoe, who are going to be incredible. They'll be battling. If we're playing one lone striker up top, it's between those two. There's no question about it. Those two are battling it out. So the question then is, where does Kyle Lafferty fit in this squad? And with hindsight, was it poor recruitment to bring Kyle Lafferty in? Was it maybe a wee bit of a panic buy? Well,
if I can come in on that, then for me, I think we bought the wrong player from Hearts. I would have brought back Stephen Naismith. I know that'll be not liked by a lot of Rangers supporters, but he's a far better player than Lafferty ever was. And I think he was the number 10 that we were calling out for at the beginning of the season and for the first part of the season. That I know it's water under the bridge now, but that's the way I would have went. Lafferty's never been my favourite either.
He's a lot more injury prone though, Naismith. I don't even know if what he's up to this season. I don't really see his name flying around too much. Obviously, I'm not watching Hearts games or anything, but he seems like he's always struggling with injuries.
Well,
I think he's had an injury, Ross. Sorry, David.
Yeah, but Hearts were top of the league when he was playing, and then they had an injury and they fell away. And now that he's back in again, they've started winning games again. So he's obviously making a big difference to them.
I mean, there's talent, of course. I mean, Christine, how about you? I mean, this is such a divisive and contentious issue with whether you would or wouldn't welcome back Stephen Naismith. It's no as if it's, like Cristiano Ronaldo or something like that. He's got quality and very well could improve the side. But considering everything that went on in 2012, are you in the camp that would never be able to forgive and forget?
I tend not to be like that with players. I mean, I know my wee friend Simon Leslie. Hello, Simon, if you're listening. He absolutely hated Kenny Miller. He could not forgive Kenny Miller for signing for Celtic. And he got to the stage where he didn't celebrate any goals that Kenny Miller scored for us. He didn't count them. So if we won 2-1 and Miller had scored one of them, it was one each, according to him. But that is a bit extreme. But I think there's a lot of players with Naismith, because he took part in that press conference, just maybe wouldn't accept him. But I want what's best for the team. So if it's best for the team that he's in the team, then I don't mind. I don't hold grudges.
I mean, I can see both sides of it. It's a difficult one, and obviously I think we are all still wounded by everything that happened in 2012. If it was Cristiano Ronaldo or Eden Hazard, then that's when you can turn a blind eye to things that were said in the past. But considering the boy's age and the quality that he had, but it wasn't top level quality, then I don't know where I come down on it, and I'm glad I never really had to make a decision there.
No, it's a mute point now anyway, isn't it?
Aye, exactly. If we go back to the players that we did bring in, obviously the squad, like I said, now there's Christine's alluded to it as well. It's a wee bit top heavy in some areas. We seem to have collected a fair few midfielders, even signing, Glenn Kamara's come in, although probably won't play too much before the end of the season. Get him up to full fitness and bring him in where we can. Same with Matt Polster, who can play right back or centre mid. So it seems like we've certainly got a fair few players that can play in a couple of different positions, and definitely a good squad coverage. Pete, do you think maybe we've got such a large pool of talented players that fitting them all into the matchday squad is going to prove a wee bit of a headache for Gerrard?
Gerrard keeps saying that he wants two players for every position. And, well, he's got that. Plus, as you say, a lot of players can play in different positions. But are we carrying too many? Probably. I believe we're 23, so you can pick 18. So we had 5 players on the bench, or not on the bench and sitting in the stand. Yeah, well, Flanagan, I can quite agree with that. But yeah, Lafferty, I think he'll probably keep a place on the bench. Middleton, yeah, the young boy. The last time Houston came on against Cowdenbeath, but I doubt he'll be on the bench every time. So yeah, I don't really think we've got too much. I think maybe quality, maybe not so deep once you go further down, and that's where I think you can get better quality, because I think we've all said tonight that Flanagan is just not the quality that we need.
Of course, but then the difficulty is that it's hard to bring in quality if they kind of know that they're going to be sat on the bench. A quality player is not going to want to come and be second fiddle to a better player. So I think the quality is always going to naturally decrease as you go deeper into the squad. But you're right in that some players have certainly got a very limited future at this club. I'd like to say. I think it's Flanagan probably doesn't have too long. The strange one for me is Wes Foderingham, in that I always thought he was a decent keeper. He was never setting the header alight. He was always solid. I thought against Cowdenbeath he was his decision making was poor. He said, a couple of times he came for the ball and made himself look a wee bit foolish. So I think that's what I mean when I say there's kind of two tiers of players in the squad. You've got the really top level players like your Defoes, your Morelos, your Ryan Kents, and then it drops down to a kind of second level of players like your Flanagans, your Fodringhams, maybe Koulibaly as well. Obviously, he'll be punted back away to France at the end of the season. Christine, how about you? What do you make of players like Koulibaly and Fodringham? Do you think they'll be able to have too much impact before the end of the season?
I would doubt it, probably, because as long as Alan McGregor stays fit, you know that he's going to be the guy in possession in terms of the goalkeeper's post. I don't know whether Stevie G will play Fodringham in the cup. Who knows? But I think really big games they won't. McGregor will get the nod ahead of Fodringham. I'm surprised. I thought Fodringham might have gone in the window, but he didn't. But who else have we got? We've got the young Ross McCrory's brother.
Robbie.
Robbie. Thanks for that, Ross. I was trying to what's his name again? And that probably he's not experienced enough. Did we sign another? Did we sign him?
Aye, so we sent Robbie McCrory's gone out on loan to Greenock Morton under JJ.
Right.
He's gone. We've got Fodringham obviously sitting on the bench. We've got Jack Anick is still technically our player. He's away at Scunthorpe on loan, and by all accounts, absolutely doing wonderful down in Scunthorpe. And I'm a good pal of mine's a Scunthorpe fan, and they love the guy, absolutely love him. And I think come the end of the season there will be a small fee exchanging hands, and it'll be best for all parties that Jack Anick just stays where he is. But you're right. We signed Ben Firth, came up from non-league in England from Barrow. He was a youngster at Liverpool for many years and worked under Steven Gerrard. He said that Mick Beale was his under-18s coach. He was playing in the same teams as John Flanagan and Ryan Kent in the youth at Liverpool. So it's a strange one in that we farm out Robbie McCrory and then bring in Ben Firth. So I'm not quite sure how that all fits together.
Who knows?
If he's fourth choice now, does that make him the fifth or fourth?
Right. Right. Excellent. How long have you been sitting on that? You've been sitting on that for about 3 weeks now, Pete, waiting for someone to bring that up.
No, well, I couldn't even remember the guy's name, to be honest with you. if I'd have been sitting in that one for 4 weeks, I'd have fell off my seat, I think.
That's unreal. Right. I think that is probably as good a place as any to leave that. As always, the time has absolutely flown by. It's probably time to wrap it up for another week. Obviously, I'd like to say a huge thank you to both Pete and Christine for their excellent insight this evening. Always fantastic guests to have on the show. I hope you've all enjoyed the show this evening. Please do head over to the website, www.gersnet.co.uk. Loads more fantastic content. It's always worth signing up to the forum. You'll find myself, Pete and Christine there. You can always get involved with the discussion. Check out all the other great content on the website. We'll be back next week with Colin in the hot seat running the rule over some difficult games away at Aberdeen and facing St Johnstone as well. So please do subscribe to the show. Make sure you don't miss a thing. All that's left for me to say is a huge thank you as always for listening, and have a great week.